And can I invite all the kids to come to the screen? So parents, can you release your kids to come to the screen so that I can tell them a kid's story? I am now going to be Uncle Gord with all the kids gathered around the screen, okay? Now, parents, it's not like I'm babysitting them. Don't leave. You stay there, but really would love to have all the kids join around. All right. Oh, look at all those kids. That's so great. So, here's how the story begins. Once upon a time, in a land far, far near, far away from where we live, but very near to how we live, there was an itty-bitty boy fish named Felix. Felix the fish. He was so cool, Felix was. And Felix had a best friend, an itty-bitty cutie patootie girl fish, and her name was Fiona. Fiona the fish. No relation to Fiona Irwin, but she might have been named after Fiona Irwin. And Felix and Fiona the fish were best buds. I mean, they did everything together. And so let's go on a couple of adventures with them. This one day, they were out swimming in the lake, and they started swimming near the docks, where there were people standing on the docks with a pole and a string and a hook and something on the hook, and they were trying to catch fish. But Fiona and Felix didn't know that because they'd never been caught before. And so all of a sudden, Felix saw this great, big, huge, fat worm just floating in the water. And he went up to it and he started nibbling on the worm. And if I was there right now, if Uncle Gord was with you kids right now, I'd start nibbling on your shoulders and nibbling on your elbows so you would feel what nibbling feels like. But since I'm not there and your parents are, parents, could you go ahead and show your kids what nibbling is like? Nibble their ears, their elbows, their shoulders. Some of the adults are doing it to one another. It's for the kids, okay? It's for the kids. All right, enough with the nibbling. So Felix is nibbling on this worm, and Fiona says, Felix, I don't have a good feeling about this. My mommy said that whenever you see a big fat worm floating in the water, that's danger. Worms like that should sink to the bottom, but when they're floating, it's danger. I don't know why, but it's danger. And he said, Fiona, I don't think this is danger. This worm is so good. Come and nibble with me. It tastes like a hamburger right off the barbecue. Or for you non-meat eaters, a floating piece of brown lettuce in the water. It tastes so great. And you got to try it. And Fiona said, no, I think it's danger. And just as Felix was about to open his mouth and take a big bite of the worm, Fiona took a big bite of Felix's tail and pulled him away. And just as she did, all of a sudden there was a flash of silver and metal, and there was a hook that came through the worm, and someone had pulled the hook and the string and was trying to catch Felix. Oh, but he got away. And as Felix and Fiona were swimming away, Felix said, Fiona, you just saved my life. Thank you so much. And Fiona said, man, Felix, I'm so glad I didn't lose you. You are such a special friend to me. In fact, you know what? I've never told you this, but I have a feeling that one day, Felix, you're going to do something really, really special. Really, really special. And Felix said, wow, Fiona, thank you. That makes me feel really, really good. Well, they played the rest of the day, and then they swam home. Another day they were together, and again they were out in the lake, but this time they were way out in the lake, deep, deep water, but they were up at the surface because the sun was shining so bright, so warm, and they were just loving being in the sunshine. And all of a sudden, there was a dark shadow came right over top of them. And this time Felix said, oh, Fiona, I have a bad feeling about this. I have a bad feeling about that shadow. And Fiona said, are you kidding? It's just a cloud. It's just a cloud that went over and blocked the sun. And Felix said, no, I think it's more than that. In fact, there's that shadow again. Fiona, dive, dive. And so she did, and they dove down. And just as they did, they saw a big beak and a head of a bird, a seagull, come diving into the water to catch them. Oh, and they just made it away. And they started swimming away. And this time, Felix turned to Fiona and said, thank you, Fiona. You just saved my life this time. And Fiona said, that's okay. Hey, you're my best friend. And listen, Felix, you're really special. And one day, something is going to be done with you that's really, really special. And Felix said, you know what, Fiona? I've been thinking about that ever since you told me that last time. I think that you're going to do something special with me. I think it's not just me. I think it's you and me. We're going to do something special. And she said, like what? Do you think we'll win the Fish Olympics or something? Well, maybe. Do you think we'll discover some, cure for a disease for old age fish? Well, maybe. I don't know. We're going to do something special. Well, they played the rest of the day and they swam home. Another day. This is their third adventure. Another day. They were swimming in the lake again, only this time they weren't in the deep water. They were in the really shallow water at the beach. And as they were swimming along in the beach, all of a sudden they looked at each other and their eyes got really wide and they got really excited because there right in front of them were little wee toes and little wee feet and little wee ankles of a little girl. And that was their favorite thing, to swim around the ankles and the feet of little kids in the water, because they would hear the kids through the water say, oh, look at the cute little fish. They're so beautiful. And they just loved that. Well, as they were swimming, all of a sudden, a net, you see that net? A fishing net came into the water and scooped up Fiona. And Fiona was inside the net. And that little girl had scooped up Fiona with her net. And Felix didn't know what to do. Fiona was yelling, Felix, save me! And all he could think to do was grab the outside of the net. So Felix, bit the outside of the net. Fiona's inside the net, and the net came up out of the water. And as it came up out of the water, of course, they were going to die. But then Felix had an idea, and he let go of the net, and he jumped into the little girl's belly button. And he got inside her belly button, and he started wiggling around with his tail, and he was tickling her, and she was laughing, and she threw the net, and Fiona swam away. And Felix jumped out of her belly button, and he swam away too. And they both got away. Oh, and Fiona said, Felix, you did it again. You saved my life again. Thank you so much. You are such a special friend. And you're going to do something special with your life. And Felix said, Fiona, you're going to too. You're going to do it with me. And I don't know what it is. You know what? Maybe we're going to start an orphanage for fish. You know the way mommy and daddy fish get caught by people who fish? Maybe when all their kids are left, we'll start a home for them. She said, I don't know, but we're going to do something special. And as they were swimming away, Felix turned to Fiona and he said, you know what my daddy told me? My daddy fish told me that we should trust the fish maker. We should trust the fish creator with our lives, because he's got a plan for us. And that's all I know that we can do. What do you think? And she said, that's a great plan. And they swam home. And for now, that's the end of the story. From far, far and near. Now, kids, don't run away. Don't run away, because Miss Karen is going to join me right now. And we are actually going to sing a song together. So this song is called Who Made the Fish That Swim? Some of you adults know it too. But here's how it goes. Oh, here she is. Here's how it goes. We'll sing the first verse, and then we'll explain how you can join in. Who made the fish that swim, the fish that swim, the fish that swim? Who made the fish that swim? Our Father God. That's it. It's that simple. So the first verse is who made the fish that swim? Second verse is who made the birds that fly? Third verse is, who made the twinkling stars? Fourth verse is, who made you and me? And the fifth verse is, we combine all four together. Fish that swim, birds that fly, twinkling stars, you and me. Okay? You want to try it? I think we need to stand up for this one. Oh, well, that move your, yeah, no, the screen angles, forget it, forget it. Just stay where you are if you want. Okay, here we go. Get ready with the fish. Who made the fish that swim, the fish that swim, the fish that swim? Who made the fish that swim? Our Father God. Birds that fly. Who made the birds that fly, the birds that fly, the birds that fly? Who made the birds that fly? Our Father God. Twinkling stars. Who made the twinkling stars, the twinkling stars, the twinkling stars? Who made the twinkling stars? Our Father God. You and me. Who made you and me, you and me, you and me? Who made you and me? Our Father God. Ready? Who made the fish that swim, the birds that fly, the twinkling stars? Who made you and me? Our Father God. Very good. Good job, guys. Thanks, Kara. Oh, that was great. That was great. Okay, kids, feel free to stay or go or whatever you need to do. That was fun. It was really fun seeing the adults singing and doing the actions as well. Well, you say, what did that have to do with our Encounters with Jesus series that we're in? You will see. You will see. But if you would, please turn in your Bibles to John chapter 6. Now, whether you have a physical paper Bible like that, or you have an electronic Bible like that, or you need to just go to BibleGateway.com or Bible Hub on your computer, could we all turn to John chapter 6? John chapter 6. And as you're turning there, you may not believe this, but there are only 2 miracles that are recorded in all 4 Gospels. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John record only 2 miracles. One would be the resurrection. That's a big one. And the other would be the story that we're looking at this morning. That's how important this story and the lessons from this story are. That's pretty big. So Brooklyn, Josu, and Dominique are going to read for us today. So if you guys could unmute yourselves and go ahead and read. We're reading from verse 1 through 15. Brooklyn, please.
Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite."
Verse 8 to 12. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted."
They gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over from those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, it flew again to a mountain by himself.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate you doing that. So let's go back up to verse 1. We have this time note sometime after this, well, obviously the events of chapter 5. But notice this statement: Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. Jesus crossed to the far shore. That really hit me a few weeks ago. And the question that rose in my heart was, how far did Jesus go to find me? What far shore were you on when he went after you? You might say, well, I was sitting on a chair in Sunday school. That's how far he went to find me. That's my story. Maybe for someone else, you were sitting on a chair in a drug rehab meeting, or somewhere in between. But you know what? It doesn't matter where we were all far from God. And this is just a beautiful adjective here. They went to the far shore. And when you read the story and the rest of the story, he is only going to be here for this event this morning. He was here for some people, for some specific encounter with some people, for them to learn who he was. But he went to the far shore to do that. And it does not matter where you are this morning in terms of your distance in relationship from God. He wants to come to where you are, and he'll go to a far shore to meet with you. Look at verse 2. And a great crowd of people followed him, and were told why. It says because they saw the signs he performed by healing the sick. So it's a good question to ask. Why were they following Jesus? We're told sort of the general reason here, but we're not told the specific reason. I mean, was it the show? Is that what they were really coming to see? I say this very respectfully and reverently, but was it rock star Jesus they wanted to meet? I mean, this is the miracle worker, and he's seeing people that were crippled and now they can walk, and people who couldn't talk can talk, and blind people can see. Like, whoa, what a show. We're going for the show. Was that the reason? Or was it the opportunity themselves? Maybe they were sick. Maybe they had relatives or friends who were sick and they needed healing. Was it the opportunity? But they're coming to Jesus. And it says, because they saw the signs he performed by healing the sick. What is a sign? This is not a tough question. I think we all know what a sign is. It's a physical object that references a physical reality. But which is the greater physical thing? The reality that the sign points to, or the sign itself? All of us love going on summer vacation, and we're kind of hoping we still can go somewhere this summer. But many of us, our favorite spot is fill in the blank. For a number of us, it's Joy Bible Camp. Well, when we get to that sign outside of Peterborough where it says 80 kilometers to Joy Bible Camp, what would you think if Karen and I turned to each other when we had kids and we said, hey guys, we're at the sign for Joy Bible Camp. Let's just park it here. Let's set up camp right here. We'll find a little fishing hole if you're into fishing. We'll find some restaurant. I'm sure they won't be able to serve, sticky buns and all the great food Joy does, but we're at the sign for Joy Bible Camp. Isn't that good enough? No. No one vacations at the sign that points to the place. And yet, that's kind of what these people were doing. They were at the sign. Why? Because Jesus was simply useful to them. He was useful to them. Man, that's a great question, right? Do I follow Jesus because he's useful to me? Am I spiritually exploring Christianity to see how useful Jesus might be to me? Or are we following Jesus because he's worthy of being followed? It is all about our attitude and our approach to Jesus. And when I thought of that, I thought of something that you've heard me talk about and others talk about called dog and cat theology. A dog looks at its owner, its master, and says, hey, you take care of me, and you feed me, and you walk me, and you scratch my belly. Why? Because you're my master, and you take care of me, and I appreciate you. A cat, on the other hand, cat theology looks at the owner and says, well, you feed me and you take care of me, and don't you ever take me for a walk on a leash, and I'll let you scratch my belly sometimes, other times I'll gouge your eyes out, but I do that because I'm your master, right? That's cat theology. Well, we can live our lives more like the cat than the dog sometimes. And we just find Jesus useful. But we don't look at him as someone who's worthy. And Jesus was not impressed by the crowds coming. He really wasn't. Let's read the rest of the story. Verse 3, then Jesus went up a mountainside and sat with his disciples. Now time out for a minute. Doesn't that sound amazing? What a great place to be. Up on a mountainside with Jesus. Just imagine that. A, being with him. B, the perspective from the mountain with Jesus. Like not just the visual, but hearing what he's saying, and in that setting, it would just be amazing. This Thursday, just 3 days ago, I went to the biggest mountain in Kitchener with Jesus. Like I took a cue from this story, and I went to Mount Trashmore. Yeah, McLennan Park Hill. That's all it is a hill. But I went up to the top, and I sat there with Jesus, and I said, Jesus, why is it so cold and windy at the middle of June? And I was shaking, and I literally had to go down and take shelter from the wind and the cold. But anywhere with Jesus is great. It really is. Our son Jay has been able to find some of my great-grandfather's writings. He was a missionary in China, and one of his favorite sayings and things that he wrote was anywhere with Jesus. And anywhere with Jesus is great, but especially on a mountain. And so I just want to ask, do you ever do that? Do you ever go somewhere with Jesus? It could be by a lake, it could be in the forest, it could be on a trail or a mountain, but to just go and spend time with Jesus, to hang out with him. That's what he wants. That's really what he wants. And we're going to see that in this story. Look at verse 4. There's this time stamp of the Jewish Passover that's through John. The Jewish Passover festival was near. And for those who like to nerd out on things about the Bible, and I'm definitely one of them, you've heard it said that Jesus' ministry was at least 3 years. It was maybe 3.5 years. How do we know that? We know that because of the time stamp of the Passover. This is the second time that the Passover festival has been mentioned in John. The first time was in chapter 2, verse 13. The third time will be in chapter 11. The fourth time will be in chapter 19. And he is taken from the cross dead just before Passover. But we know then that Jesus was at these 4 Passovers, and his ministry began before the first one in John 2. So we know it was at least 3, maybe 3.5 years of his ministry. But let's get into the story now. Look at verse 5 and verse 6. This is amazing. When Jesus looked up, now they're on the mountain. He's on the mountain with his disciples, but he looks up and he saw a great crowd coming toward him. He said to Philip, "Oh, they found us." No, that's not what he said. What he said was, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Now, first of all, don't you love that first person plural, we? He doesn't say, Philip, where are you? Or where are you disciples going to buy bread? He doesn't say that. He's included. He says, where are we going to buy bread? And I think the miracle's all the greater because they're on a mountain. There's no stores, generally speaking, on mountains. I mean, it would have been one thing if they'd been down in the valley, down near some town, but they're literally up in a mountain. There's no place to buy bread. But that's how he frames it. Where are we going to buy bread? And notice he frames it in the context of others. It's for others to eat. That's what he's thinking about. He's thinking about these people. Now, I've been thinking about this for a number of weeks, but I honestly believe that Philip's best response back to Jesus should have been, right back at you, Jesus. Where are we going to buy bread to feed these people? Hey, have you ever been in a situation in your life where you didn't have enough to meet whatever the need was? Like, for instance, have you ever not had enough money to pay the bills? Karen and I, over our years of marriage, there's been a couple of times where that's happened, where we didn't have enough. Do you know what Jesus asks us in those moments? He literally asks us, where are we, as in he and us, where are we? How are we going to get the funds to cover the bills? But you know what we do? We miss the question because we're so busy, so preoccupied with our own question, where will I find the funds to cover the bills? Or if we're really spiritual, we'll say, Jesus, where will I find the funds to cover the bills? Like, we're still asking, where am I the resource? Where am I going to find the resources in myself? Or maybe you're in a season right now where you're navigating a relationship struggle, a really difficult situation with someone. Listen for Jesus saying to you, what are we going to do about this relationship? He doesn't say, what are you going to do? That's what we ask. What am I going to do about this relationship struggle? He says, what are we going to do? On the topic that we looked at last week, I really believe Jesus is saying, hey, church, with me, what are we going to do about this issue of ethnic discrimination? Not you. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? In fact, as a church, that's a question that I believe Jesus is continually asking the church. Radiant City Church, what are we going to do so that lost people will become found? And found people will become discipled, and discipled people will go out and find lost people that they can be found. What are we going to do? Not what are you going to do? What am I going to do? What are we going to do? It does not matter what your situation of life is. That is the question that we need to have our ears open to from Jesus. What are we? Even your business, that business that you run, that company that you're involved with, your workplace, without me, Jesus says, you can do nothing. So hear the question, what are we going to do? But then look at verse 6. This is really an astounding statement. He asked this only to test him. He already had in mind what he was going to do. Now, on this point, women are more like Jesus than men. I got to be honest. They really are. In two areas. First of all, in terms of feeding people. Now, this is my experience. I know some of you guys are expert cooks, and maybe you are the one who has the impulse to feed people. But around our house, like when people show up around 3, 4, 5 o'clock, I'm like, wonder if they're going to leave before supper. And Karen's thinking, what am I going to feed them for supper? What are we going to, Jesus, what are we going to feed them for supper? Right? So women tend to be, not all, but tend to be more like Jesus than men here. But especially in this area of asking questions, they already have answers to. Fellas, I'm not talking about the question, does this dress make me look slim? Okay, if you ever hear that question from your wife or significant other, you need to run as fast as you can. That is a no-win answer, okay? If you say, oh, yes, dear, that does make you look slim, she'll say, you're lying. If you say, well, there are other outfits that do make you look slimmer, she will say, you know that tent we own? That's your home for the next month, right? So it's just a no-win answer. Run away from that question. That's not the one I'm thinking of. Here's the question. She will look at you and say, dear, you know that issue that we have between us right now? Well, do you think we should ignore it? Do you think we should sweep it under the rug and not talk about it? Or do you think we should talk about it now? And the guy usually answers, is there a third option? that dress is really slimming, dear. We should feed these people who are sitting in front of us right now in our living room. I'll be in the tent, dear. Right? But seriously, the question that Jesus asks doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem fair. Who asks a question that they already have an answer to and they're not really interested in your input? So the question is, why did he ask? Well, here's why he asked. Because Jesus wants relationship. Our Creator, our Savior, our King wants partnership with us. He knows the problem. Did you know that? He knows the solution to the problem. But he wants us to participate with him in the solution to the problem. He wants relationship. He knows what he's going to do. The miracle is coming. What we call a miracle, Jesus calls Tuesday. It's just another day for him, right? And so I think it's really fun that in verse 7 and 8 and 9, the two of the disciples actually take a run at trying to answer Jesus' question. So in verse 7, Philip answered him, well, scratching his chin, I'm sure, it would take more than a half a year's wages. Some of your Bibles, if you have the ESV or others, it says 200 denarii. It would take half a year's wage, more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Philip is the number crunching nerd of the group. Now, we love number crunching nerds. We all are nerds in some way, right? But Pete, we love you. We love the accountants among us. We really do. But Philip's that guy. And it's interesting. He says, I've calculated it out. It's not a half a year's wages. It's not a full year's wages. It's 200 denarii. Out of a 360-day year in the Jewish calendar, Jesus, that's 55.55 repeater percent just so that everyone gets one bite. I think Jesus laughed at Philip because he loved the way the guy's wired. He loved that he took a run at it. But you know what Philip's really saying? This is really important. Philip is saying this, Jesus, what we have is not enough. What we have is not enough. Have you ever said that? Have you ever said that? We've all said that when we want to spend some money for stuff for ourselves. Oh, I don't have enough to buy that luxury car or that great outfit or to go to that place. But I'm talking about specifically in terms of helping others. Have you ever said, I don't have what it takes. I don't have enough. I don't have enough talent, intelligence, finances, giftedness. I don't have enough. And so we say to Jesus, what we have is not enough. Another disciple takes a run at it. Verse 8 and 9. Another of his disciples, Andrew, and this is Simon Peter's brother, spoke up, here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will that go among so many? So I want to say something positive about Andrew and then something point out something maybe a little diced. What's the word? Yeah, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but just a little bit questionable about Andrew. Okay. So first of all, positive is every time you see Andrew, he's bringing someone to Jesus. That's really cool. Chapter 142, he was bringing his brother Simon. You can look for others, but he's always bringing someone to Jesus. And that's why the Billy Graham Association adopted this Andrew, and they call this program Operation Andrew. And that's where you make a list of people that you would like to come to Jesus. I literally have a list on my desk all the time of 5 people that I'm praying for that will come to Jesus. Operation Andrew. And the idea is to pray these prayers. God, open my eyes. How can I be in this person's life? For the gospel. And open their hearts to Jesus and open my mouth so that I can speak the gospel to them and invite them or bring them to something where they might encounter Jesus. So that's Andrew. Great guy in that way. But now here's the questionable part about Andrew. Is he literally saying to Jesus, Jesus, I'm not above taking lunches from little kids. I I think I could take him. He's about 10 years old. I could overpower him. I could steal his loaves, steal his fish. No problem. Again, I kind of wonder if Jesus didn't smile at Andrew. But he brings this boy, this beautiful, beautiful story of this little boy. And you know what? We know he was poor. We know he was poor for two reasons. It was a very small lunch, like 2 small fish, 2 or 5 small loaves of bread, but they were barley. They weren't wheat, they weren't flax. Barley was the absolute least expensive bread at that time, and it's kind of a sign that he was poor. But he brings these 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. Now, are the children out of the room? This is Felix and Fiona. This is them. This is their special contribution. This is it. Remember when Jesus said, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. So here's Felix and Fiona, and they're going to produce many seeds. A miracle is going to happen because of them. Well, don't miss this, though. Andrew, like Philip, is saying, again, what we have is not enough. Now, this was not news to Jesus. It's not news to Jesus. He knows that. But man, does he ever love to hear that from us. Because what we do is we say, well, what do I have? What can I do? Of my resources, what can I bring? And he knows we don't have enough, and he's longing for us to admit that. So finally, Jesus, he responds to that because it really is in sync with what he was going to do. Look at verse 10. Jesus said, guys, I want you to participate in the miracle. Have the people sit down. And this is really kind of a touching note. There was plenty of grass in the place, and they sat down. Well, why would the Spirit of God tell us that? Why would Jesus care? Because God cares for us. He cares for us. This is not a license for comfort. Oh, God wants me to have the most comfortable whatever, because obviously Jesus cares about that. No, but it shows his care. He meets our felt needs. That's kind of amazing. But then notice this. It says in brackets, there were about 5,000 men were there. Now, we already know that there was more categories of people than just men. We already know there's a little boy here. Why is he not counted? Do you think that there were probably women there? Yeah, likely. How many? We don't know. But let's assume there's 5,000 men. Let's say there's 5,000 women. If even 3,000 of those were married, how many kids? 2.3 kids each. Most theologians believe there was at least 20,000 people there. Conceivably, there's 20,000 people there. Now, obviously the question, why were only the men counted and not the women and the children? This is not an authority order thing that Ephesians and Romans, 1 Timothy talks about. This is a patriarchy issue, right? At that time, it was all about patriarchy. Just the men were counted. Not great. But here's the question. Please hear this question. From which category did the provision for the miracle come? From which sector of people did Jesus choose someone to be the seed for the miracle? From someone that wasn't even counted. Jesus chose from someone, from some group that wasn't even counted. Maybe you don't feel like you have what it takes. Maybe you don't have a sense that like you have a contribution and I don't even count. Guess what? That's who Jesus wants to use. And how many people in the crowd actually didn't need a miracle? Only one that we know of. This little guy with the lunch, he didn't need a miracle. He had his lunch. And we might feel like, well, I don't need a miracle. Hey, it's not about you. And it's not about me. It's about feeding others. And it's so amazing. Jesus has this invitation, can I use your lunch, little boy? And he accepts Jesus' invitation to participate. And that's the question for us this morning. Have you? Have I accepted Jesus' invitation to participate, whatever it is? You know, again, around our gospel conversation about this issue of ethnic discrimination, I really think it applies. I read Anthony Evans, son of Tony Evans, this week, and listen to what he said. The only way we can take some ownership in a problem is to acknowledge that there is a problem and to get to work seeing what our small but meaningful gospel contribution toward a solution might be. That is such a great statement. And that's absolutely in line with our story this week. Jesus, what would you with us like to do? And we bring it to Jesus. Well, look what happens. This is where it really gets exciting, right? Verse 11. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. Do not miss this. Jesus gave thanks for what was not enough. Jesus said, "Thank you, God, for what is not enough." What if God is just waiting for you to do that? You say, "I do not have enough gifting." Yeah, but if you thank me for the gifting you do have. I do not have enough resources financially. Yeah, but if you thank me for what you do have. I do not have abilities. Yeah, but if you thank me for what you do have. I know it's not enough. You know it's not enough. But have you blessed me and thanked me for it? What if God is just waiting for that from us? Have you thanked God for what you have that's not enough? That's what Jesus did. Verse 11, he gave thanks and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. Now, here's a question. Whenever did the 5 barley loaves and the 2 small fish begin to multiply? Was it during the giving of thanks or during the giving away? Let me say that again. Was it in the giving of thanks or in the giving away? Well, if it was in the giving of thanks, let's assume they all closed their eyes. Can you imagine? Like, here's 5 little loaves and 2 little fish. They open their eyes and now there's like truckloads of food. I don't think so. It was in the giving away. It was in the distribution. I once heard it put this way, and this is really powerful, but the miracle of multiplying didn't happen during the blessing, it happened during the breaking. And I don't know about you, but in my life, that's when the growth usually happens, in the breaking. When we're going through issues and struggles and we know we don't have enough, and yet we give ourselves to God, and we may even give ourselves away to someone else, and God starts distributing, and we're breaking, that's when the multiplying happens. If it's in Jesus' hands, that is when the multiplying happens. And not just multiplying. Look at verse 11. As much as they wanted. All you can eat miracles are definitely the best miracles ever. Wouldn't you agree? This is an all you can eat miracle. Verse 12. When they had all had enough to eat, they couldn't eat more. Jesus said to his disciples, this is such a curious thing. Gather the pieces that are left over. Now, bread, obviously, not the fish. No refrigeration, right? But let nothing be wasted. Hey, show of hands, and I can't see everyone, but who likes leftovers? Okay, my wife and I have had an ongoing multi-decade disagreement about this. She does not like leftovers. I think all the seasonings blend together overnight. It's all about the leftovers for me. But here's the question. Do you waste things? Jesus said, let nothing be wasted. We shouldn't waste resources that God gives us the gift of stewarding. But this isn't just talking about bread and talking about fruit. This is talking about our lives. Are you wasting your gifts? Are you wasting your abilities? Are you wasting your life? Let nothing be wasted. God has given you that small little meal that we might thank him for it and distribute it and see it multiply, and none of it is wasted. Man, that is so cool. Look at verse 13. So they gathered them and filled how many baskets? 12 baskets with the pieces filled. 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Now, wait a minute. 12 baskets of leftovers. Did Jesus miscalculate? Did the God who precisely put all the systems that maintain the universe he created miscalculate? It's a great question, right? Like, he started multiplying in the breaking and multiplying in the distributing, and he multiplied just a bit too many times, and we have leftovers. I don't think so. He calculated to perfection. 12 baskets. Like, who could pull off a miracle like that? That there's exactly one basket for each of the disciples. 12 disciples, 12 baskets, and they're walking away with full baskets with their mouths on the ground looking at each other. Like, who is this that he did this miracle? Why? Why did he do that? So that they would know. Please don't miss this. This miracle is not about the bread. It is about Jesus, the bread of life. That's where we're coming to in this chapter. It's about them understanding that I am more than enough. I am more than enough. And that's why David said, my cup runs over. My cup runs over. God is more than enough. And is there possibly another reason for Jesus asking them to collect the leftovers? Well, we're going to see during the next sign miracle story next Sunday. And spoiler alert, here's what it is. The leftovers were there to remind them and to remind us that what he did yesterday can feed us tomorrow. And that he'll remain as faithful in the future as he was in the past. But we need those reminders, those leftovers, to remember just how good he is. Verse 14 and 15. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. Was Jesus impressed by that? Not so much. Verse 15, Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Hey, we really need to jump down to verse 26 and 27. Because honestly, this is Jesus' commentary on this miracle. Look at verse 26 and 27 of John 6. Jesus answered, very truly I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval. Verse 29, the work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent. This was not about the bread, it's about the bread of life. It's about Jesus. It's not about the sign, it's about the destiny in Jesus. So I want to close with this. I want to ask you 3 questions. Feel free to keep muted, but answer out loud if you like. 3 questions, and for us to think about some takeaways from this incredible story. And for that, I'm going to share the screen because I want you to see these. Take a look at your screen. The title of this message, I hadn't said this earlier, but the title is When Our Not Enough Becomes More Than Enough. So here's a question. When everything is going well, do we need a miracle? And the answer is quite obviously, no, we don't. All miracles begin with a problem. All miracles begin with a problem. Do you have any problems in your life? Like, just think through what's going on in your world. Do you have any problems? We all have problems, small, medium, and large. Listen, no problems, no miracles. No problems, not a candidate for a miracle. Jesus comes to us. Open our ears, God, that we might hear Jesus saying to us, what are we going to do? here? What are we going to do to provide for others? Not just for you, but for others. The multiplying happens in the breaking. Second question. When do 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish ever equal 5,000 plus people being fed and full? And the answer is quite obviously never. Never. Except when Jesus is inserted into the equation. That's the only way. Our math without Jesus can never work. It can never add up. And yet we keep asking, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? But we never can get there. May I invite you, entreat you, encourage you, challenge you. Don't go another moment without Jesus in the equation of your life. Not just for the problems, not just using him like a spare tire and a last resort, but in the equation of life, have Jesus in that equation. And final question, do you follow Jesus because he's useful? Do you follow Jesus because he's useful? Jesus wants us to know him, who he is, not simply what he does. If you take a look at the screen, you'll see an image emerging. Communion. It represents what he did so long ago at the cross when he gave his body, poured out his blood for people who had a problem. All miracles begin with a problem. Hey, we all have or had a problem. We were born in sin. We were shaped in iniquity. We were born far from God. And apart from the solution of God, we have a problem for eternity. Do we need a miracle? You bet we do. We all need a miracle, and all miracles begin with a problem. But we've got to acknowledge that. And again, that's why Jesus asked the question, do you have what it takes? No, we don't have enough. And for us to admit, God, I fall short of your glory. I do not have enough. And look at the next piece. When do 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish ever equal what we need? When do, the good things I do, the good works I commit, the good words I say, the good life I live, when does that ever add up to God in his holiness being satisfied? Never. Never can my good deeds outweigh my bads, because it's not an issue of balances. It's I have fallen short of the glory of God. I am a sinful, sin-prone person. And unless Jesus stands in my place and enters the equation, I'm without hope in this life and for eternity. But the incredible, beautiful message of the gospel is that he did. He inserted himself into the equation. He came and he had a body and he had blood in his body and he was a living being, and he went to a cross and he poured out that blood, and his life was taken for us so that we could satisfy, not us, that he could satisfy the holiness and the claims of God's justice. And this last question, so why do you follow him? Do you follow him because he's useful, that he's your fire escape, that he helps you out in life? No, it's so much more than that. It's because of who he is. It's because of how worthy he is. And we can't separate that from what he's done for us at the cross, and what he's done for us by coming alive again and being within us by his Spirit. But it's who he is. He is worthy. He's not just useful. Would you reflect on those key points this morning? And I'm so sorry I didn't say beforehand in this message, do you have your elements ready for communion? But we're going to take communion now. We're going to do that. I'm going to go off screen. And let's pray. I did send it out in an email, so hopefully some of you are prepared for this, but let's pray. God, we thank you for this incredible gift of yourself in the person of Jesus coming to this earth, revealing who you are, a God of love, a God of relationship, a God who just desires so deeply intimacy with us, to know and be known by us. Father, thank you that he took a body and he allowed that body, like a sacrificial lamb, to be slain, to be murdered on a cross. But God, in the murdering at the hands of people was the sacrifice and the offering before God. And God, thank you. Thank you that you took all of our sin from us and put it on him. And he carried it in his own body on the tree, on the cross. And so this morning, as we take these elements, we are incredibly grateful for what you have done for us, Jesus. But beyond what you've done, thank you for who you are. And as we take these elements, God, we want to say thank you for what you did, but we also want to say, I take you, Jesus, into my body, into my life. I take this bread, I take this juice or whatever the fluid is, and I take it in and I say, I want you, Jesus, in my life. You are the most important, significant thing in my life. And I take these now with great gratitude and thanksgiving. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen. Feel free, if you have the elements in front of you. Let's take these together now in Jesus' name. Quietness just to thank him for who he is and what he's done. And then after that brief time, Jackie, if you'd come back and lead us in a song, that'd be great. Thank you.